Joining us now is Pat Buchanan, syndicated columnist, author extraordinaire. He joins us now. Pat, great to talk to you, my friend. How are you?
Doing fine, Laura. How you doing?
I'm good. Let's first talk about Tillerson. I mean, I never understood that pick for Trump. I never got it. I mean, he's more of a pragmatist, I think, than a straight internationalist. But the chemistry wasn't there, and they disagreed on, as far as I could tell, many of the key issues when it comes to geopolitics.
Yeah, it was not only an issues clash in a number of areas, it was certainly a personality clash. And I understand that Trump felt uncomfortable that he was did not move as quickly as Trump likes. And you know, when you had that moron incident a little while back, it looked like that's the beginning of the end. I will say one thing about Tillerson. I think he was at least one voice of caution in that inner cabinet or inner sanctum of the top foreign policy elites who would say, let's wait a minute and see before we do something. So I think that part is going to be missed somewhat. This is all accelerator and no brake now, Laura.
Yeah. Well, Pat, it seems to me that the president needs to have that. He needs to have that comfort level. And when you have your Secretary of State calling the president a moron, that's just not going to work. And I think Tillerson is, he's the head of this big multinational corporation, and he was pals with all these world leaders, which is fine. I don't have any problem with that. But Trump's kind of a guy's guy. He in Pompeo is much more of a populist conservative. He gets the ideological underpinnings of Trump when it comes to tariffs and all these other issues. And Tillerson was never comfortable with Trumpism, I don't think.
Well, I think you're right. I think Pompeo is obviously not your classic Secretary of State, a William Rogers type, or someone who's, who deals diplomatically. He's very smart. He's tough. He's aggressive. West Point, and I think his persona is very much matches that of Donald Trump. And they're the type of people who, when they were younger, would have probably gotten along much better than Rex Tillerson, the Eagle Scout, and Donald Trump. So, I do think Tillerson brought something to the table there, but you're right. In terms of persona and in terms of issues and in terms of what had been said and water over the dam, I think there was just too much there, and it was inevitable Tillerson was going to go. I mean, there wasn't any fortnight period in the recent 6 months where it wasn't discussed.
Well, I think, again, this is Trump's cabinet. I think a year in, he now knows what he needs, and moved to remove Reince Priebus, who, I like Reince, but he's more of an establishment Republican, and Kelly's, without a doubt, been a good addition to that White House, and now he's going to be moving in other directions as well. Looks like he's going to get rid of the head of the VA, who's an Obama holdover, and maybe put Rick Perry over there. I don't know how that will work out, but people are saying, well, this is a sign of chaos, Pat. I think it's a sign of Donald Trump knowing what he wants.
I think I agree with you on this. I think Trump looked over his first year, his cabinet, what he wanted, what he had, and he wants to reshape it, and he's unhesitant about going ahead and doing it. And you hear that McMaster maybe moved out, and you mentioned the head of the Veterans Administration and and the rest of it. And quite clearly, Trump wants his own team. His own people he's comfortable with and tends to agree with, and for this second year and for the rest of this session. And I agree with you. I mean, that victory up there in Pennsylvania, that young guy's an ex-Marine. He's an attractive guy. He's taken positions perfectly compatible with that Republican, that conservative, socially conservative district up there. And I wasn't surprised he won. He worked very hard and put in the time and effort, and I told a friend yesterday I thought he would win a very close race, and he did.
Well, and he's essentially a Republican. I mean, he's the idea of a Democrat who says Pelosi's got to go.
Well, that's one good thing about it is the Pelosi thing. This is not good news for her. When a Democrat in a conservative Republican district wins by saying, I would not vote for Nancy Pelosi for Speaker. So I think I predicted on the new little McLaughlin group that if the Democrats do win the House, which I think is probably better than even money as of now, I don't see Pelosi as Speaker in 2019. Do you?
No. It's time for her to go. I mean, she doesn't seem to be able to put two sentences together. God bless her, and she seems like she's having a lot of trouble encouraging her own ranks to support her. And I think her time has come and gone. So they need a young, dynamic person who can.
They need fresh leadership up there on the Hill. It's very old and tired, and there is a lot of energy in the Democratic Party. Of course, it's a little more to the left than it is in the center of the party, but. That's going to be a great battle coming up in the future of the Democratic Party. You know, we all talk about what's going on in the GOP, but this battle between the, if you will, the sort of militant millennial left and the old establishment folks and who are still dominant on Capitol Hill, I think a real battle is coming.
Yeah, and what is your sense about the House of Representatives, Pat? Obviously, if the House flips to Democrat control, Donald Trump, I think, is in a lot of trouble with the Mueller report and whatever comes of that. The Democrats going to be perhaps itching to impeach him. What are your thoughts?
I think the Democrats might be, but you know that could mean they should probably think long and hard before they do that, unless there's some kind of what is perceived as an open and shut case on the part of Mueller. Because, you know, first, I don't think they would succeed because I think Republicans are likely to hold the Senate. That's the place where the so-called trial will be held. Secondly, I will say that the conservatives and Sean Hannity and folks who have been really doing this fight up there, the American people are looking on the Mueller thing as really just sort of the political operation of the left to reverse the election returns from 2016. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. I mean, the media in this town, it's like that this is their ball club. You know, we're for the Green Bay Packers here or something, cheering Mueller on. So I think unlike Watergate, it is going to be perceived as Mueller, even though not him, but the whole operation there, I think is seen very much as an operation to overturn the election of 2016, which stunned the left, and they started to move right as soon as it was over. And there's a tremendous amount in there, the Comey and how he handled things, and all this dossier and all the rest of it not being looked at. So I think it's so politicized that I'm not sure the Democrats would be wise to move down that road as the first thing they do if they won the House.
No, I think, again, if the economy continues to do well, which it probably will be doing pretty well, and the Democrats upend or try to upend the presidency that is presiding over this economy, I mean, it didn't go too well for the Republicans.
Send it into the dumpster.
Yeah.
If they send it into the dumpster, they'd just be blamed. Say, these guys came in, they're trying to overthrow the government, they've destroyed a great economy, they've reversed all the good things that were happening and the good things that were being done. So I think, the wiser heads, I mean, they would be, I think they would be better off looking at it now, not going down that road. You saw what happened to Newton, those guys, in '98 when they did that.
Yeah, well, I think, again, we're talking to Pat Buchanan here on the Laura Ingraham Show. The way things are proceeding in the geopolitical climate, more people are now onto what you've been onto, and I think I've been onto probably not quite as long as you, but certainly for a couple decades, what's happening with the rise of communist China. That they have very specific and very well laid out plans to dominate in major industries, first by 2025 and then the whole shooting match in 2050. There's a big piece out today that I posted on lauraingraham.com about this. You got Marco Rubio writing big op-eds about how China is the real threat. Even Bob Corker on my show last night, Pat, said it's not Russia. Russia has an economy the size of Italy. They can be a problem, but China is the real problem. So more of the establishment types who presided over the rise of China are now saying, oops, this is kind of a problem.
Sure, they got a $375 billion trade surplus, at our expense last year, which more than covered their entire defense budget. They're a giant country, 1.4 billion or 1.3 billion, 10 times the population of Russia, which is an aging country, which is a diminished country, which has a nationalist leader. But in the longer term, Russia is not the challenge to the United States. Russia, the one that's going to build its own new world order is China. And this is one, I'll tell you one thing that concerns me about the changes here, is Pompeo and some of these folks are really hardliners when it comes to Iran. The last thing we need is another war in the Middle East.
Oh, God.
China hasn't gotten itself involved in any of these 6 wars we're in right now, and they seem to have done fine by staying out.
Yeah, this is what was said by the commerce minister from China yesterday, Zhang Zhan, referring to the status as the world's number 2 economy and a major trading partner to most nations. He said, we aim to stabilize our position as a big trading nation by 2020, transform into a strong trading country by 2035, and finally become an economic and trade giant by 2050. He said at a press briefing, and he said plans are underway to boost innovation and overseas investments, improve efficiency in foreign aid, step up cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative, and deepen multilateral regional economic and trade cooperation. They're going to push forward with their Silk Road e-commerce, again, to dominate in tech and dominate in new technologies, which is why I think Donald Trump this week said, Qualcomm, you're not gonna get gobbled up by the Chinese, because we don't need China to dominate in chip making, and we're just not gonna countenance that. And I think that was the right call.
I think so, but let me say this. We are very far down this road. When you've got a $375 billion trade surplus in China's favor, an $800 billion trade deficit for the United States overall, to turn that around is going to take a long process, and it's a lot of ground has been lost that's never going to be recovered. We have built China. The Chinese fellow says they're going to be a great power in 2050. They are a great power right now, a mighty Asian power, dominant in East Asia, and as you say, they're moving into Europe. They're moving into Africa.
Yep.
Sure,
we're already there.
And they're moving to push the United States slowly. They don't want a war. They're very familiar with the Thucydides trap, what's happened to the British and the Germans when the British were declining and the Germans rising. They got themselves in 2 wars, which killed both of them. And the Chinese are aware of that. But they've got a long-term strategy, and darned if I know what America's long-term strategy is post-Cold War.
Well, I think Donald Trump's trying to begin it with trade, and hopefully he makes some headway there. But I agree, Pat. We've lost a lot of ground. Pat Buchanan here on the Laura Ingraham Show. Thanks, Pat.